Hey guys, welcome back to another tutorial. In this tutorial, we're going to cover the must-be-true logical reasoning question. So what is a must-be-true? Well, a must-be-true question requires that you identify a bunch of premises, and from there you're supposed to draw a conclusion or form some sort of deduction. Whereas an assumption question, you're given a conclusion and you're supposed to bring an assumption to the party, which is basically a missing premise. A premise and assumption means exactly the same thing in logic. Okay, it's just another synonym for the same thing. So with a sufficient assumption, you're looking for a missing premise that when you put into the argument, it makes the argument valid. And when we're dealing with valid argument, what are we dealing with? We're dealing with basically deductive type argument. Now, with a necessary assumption is a piece of premise that when you put into the argument, it makes the argument work. So what do I mean by work? Well, it's a necessary premise called a necessary assumption. It's a necessary premise. So it's like going from A to B. You need that little bridge, and that little bridge would be the necessary premise that you need to put into the argument. Because without that, you're basically going to have to make a logical leap, and that's not allowed in logic or in the LSAT. So let's get started. Let's take this apart. So this is going to be the hack. So what we're going to do now is we're going to tear this argument apart, and then we're going to rearrange it in the proper order. Okay, so you can find this question on LSAT Preptest 32 Logical Reasoning number 7. So the reason why we know this is a must-be-true question, because the prompt basically says, if the statements above are true, which one of the following must be true? Notice it says must be true, whereas with a soft must be true or weak must be true, they'll ask you, if the statements above are true, which one of the following can be inferred, can be true, something along those lines. So the language is a lot softer, okay? So that's how you distinguish a strong must be true versus a weak must be true. Okay, so let's get started. It says, if you have no keyboarding skill at all, you will not be able to use a computer. And if you're not able to use a computer, you will not be able to write your essays using a word processing program. Okay, so let's take this apart. Premise 1, premise 2, that kind of thing. So premise 1, if you have no keyboarding skills at all, you will not be able to use a computer. So we can simply say no keyboarding skill, which we can abbreviate KS, arrow, no computer. Okay, so we can just basically say no C. All right, so that's premise 1. We're done with that. So now let's go to premise 2. Premise 2, if you're not able to use a computer, you will not be able to write your essays using a word processing program. So we can simply say no C, arrow, no EWP, which is an abbreviation for essays using word processing program. So now let's put them together and see what we can get. So now we can go from premise 1, which says arrow, no computer. And then we can go from no computer all the way to no EWP, which stands for essays using a word processing program. So now let's put them all together and let's see what kind of conclusions we can draw from this. Okay, so it looks like we can draw basically two types of conclusion. We can say using the transitive property. Now let's review what a transitive property is. A transitive property in logic, in the official logic lingo, would be a hypothetical syllogism. So basically it goes from A to B, B to C, then you can say A to C. Okay, just garden variety transitive property you learn in math class. Okay, we can go no keyboarding skill, arrow, no essay using word processing program. And then from there, we can also flip and negate and get the contrapositive, which basically states if you're able to write your essays using a word processing program, then you have keyboarding skills. So those are the two distinct conclusions that we can draw. Okay, so now let's go back and find the right answer. All right, let's see. A, if you have some keyboarding skills, you will be able to write your essays using a word processing program. Let's say we have that. If you have some keyboarding skill. Well, we only know we have no keyboarding skill. We don't know anything if we have keyboarding skill. So that's wrong. Let's go to B. If you're not able to write your essays using a word processing program. Well, do we have that? If you're not able, we only know if you have no keyboarding skills. So we don't know that either. So that's out. Okay, let's go to C. If you're able to write your essay using a word processing program right here, okay, basically the contrapositive, then you at least have some keyboarding skill. So that's correct. That looks like that's the contrapositive. Let me define what the word some means on the LSAT. Okay, some can range all the way from 1 all the way up to 100. So it doesn't matter. It has a huge scope. So if you have 1 all the way up to 100, then you have at least some keyboarding skill, which is sufficient for this argument. In this case, C is the right answer because we can go EWP arrow keyboarding skill. There you go, guys. You got the answer. Voila. Okay, how do we do this in 5 steps? Well, step 1, for any type of logical reasoning type question, but in this case, we're dealing with a must be true. What you want to first do, and spend like about 10 seconds doing this. Don't spend too much time on this. You want to ascertain and determine if you're dealing with the strong variety or you're dealing with the weak variety, okay? And you can make that distinction based on the prompt that's given. So the prompt will say something like must be true, could be true, can be true, based on the language, okay? The tone of the language. From there, if you're dealing with the strong variety, then what you want to do is you want to look for logical keywords. Once you find those logical keywords, make sure you understand basically the heuristic or the procedure on how to translate, identify these types of logical reasoning, and then basically apply the correct strategy. Step 4, you want to place these in logic, we call it standard form. You don't need to really know that. Standard form. So WFF stands for well-formed formula. So a well-formed formula is nothing more than basically aligning the premise to conclusion, so it's easy to see. So sometimes on the LSAT, they'll give you a conclusion up front and then premise. It doesn't matter the order. You just want to rearrange it back into the correct order. So then it's just easier to see. Okay, so you want to go premise, line, conclusion. Okay, and then from there, you basically just form a conclusion and find the credited answer. And then you're done. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you guys next time. QED, that means we basically prove this whole entire statement. QED says that which must be proved, and that's what we did. All right, guys. So don't forget to like, share, and comment, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.